welcome to Season 2 of the Chile Today podcast. I'm Bethany Francis. I'm abroad, living abroad, broadcasting from Santiago, Chile. I explore Chilean news, cultural topics, travel, business, and more with my special guests and our producer, Podcast Pingüino. To read more about the news topics you'll hear today, check out our news affiliate, chiletoday.cl. If you enjoy the podcast, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. If you're feeling generous, rate and review. If you'd like to hear about a certain topic, have a story to share, or would like to ask a question, contact me directly through Instagram at Chile Today Podcast.
Hey everyone, this is I am not Bethany. This clearly I am Pingüino. Bethany at the moment is not available to record. She went on a fishing trip. I'm Pingüino. I'm right here. I'm with our last guest, Lenny.
Hi there.
We're gonna bring you a little bit about news before we get into the second part of our. What was the name of the episode?
Oh, was it the 7-ish weird things that Chileans have weird relationship with weird German weird things? Something.
Yeah,
weird.
A lot of weird about
Chile, Germany's 7-ish things and lots of weird.
Yes, part 2. That's gonna come out. That's gonna come out after this. We're gonna talk about a little bit about the news. Much of an introduction, I'm not sure. I'm not much of a speaker, so I don't know.
Well,
really.
you're speaking Penguin. That's actually quite an achievement.
That is
don't
true.
sell yourself short.
Speaking Penguin and editing Penguin.
It's editing Penguin. It's a multifacetico.
Yes, not easy editing with flippers. Let's get right on to the news.
All right.
So we're gonna talk about 3 things that happened last week. The first one you might have seen, which was the Iquique. What happened? Yeah, in Iquique there was a anti-immigrant march.
Yeah.
Do you have something to talk about it?
Actually, I have a few thoughts on the matter, but why don't you go ahead and give us the rundown of what happened first?
So on Saturday, a group of protesters attacked a migrant camp and burned their belongings, such as tents and clothes and blankets. The Carabineros police force. Wait, should have read this before. The Carabineros dislodged the migrants from their encampment, but did nothing to prevent the attack. The marchers chanted racist slurs while waving flags. So basically what's going on in Iquique is that a lot of migrants, especially from Venezuela, they're traveling by foot, crossing the desert. And they get to Iquique where they don't have there's nowhere where they can stay. So they stay in tents in the camps. I think there was a plaza. How do you say plaza? Like a small park?
Yeah, like a plaza. That's usually the term used.
Like a plaza in
right.
Like living
square.
there. Yeah, town square. People living in tents, and a lot of people didn't like that.
Yeah.
So they did a march against. At first, it started out peacefully. Well, as peaceful as an anti-immigrant march can be.
Yeah.
And of course, unfortunately, things started escalating, and they started burning their belongings. As I said before, Carabineros managed to get people out of the tents, and they managed to get the immigrants outside of the tents before the marchers arrived. That's basically the gist of it. And international organizations have criticized the march and the events that happened.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I mean, and I think also there were, from what I've read, there were actually a bunch of these not even immigrants, they were like exilees, if you will, because they were on their way back, from what I understood. Like, that's what I read. Like, a bunch of them, they were actually on their way to the airport or whatever, just to, leave the country again.
Oh, okay.
Which was also then just like, okay, maybe the protesters probably didn't know that, but it's just like, okay, you just made it so much harder for these guys to leave, and that's what you want, isn't it? But I mean, all in all, this is just freaking terrible what happened. I mean, I think big part of this is also probably on Piñera, because from what I understood, he made a big old promise. Was it back in 2015?
2016 when he was sworn in back. No, it was 2017.
Yeah, and he pulled a full on Angela Merkel. He was just like, come on in, we can do that, And then like, no, okay, like in his defense, quote unquote, okay, nobody could really foresee the pandemic coming or the estallido social or whatever. But it's just like, don't make promises you can't keep. And, even if it wasn't for the pandemic or the estallido social, or both of them, like, I don't think that he would have been in a capacity where he would have really been able to keep the promise that he made. And look, this, I'm all for, let's say, regulation when it comes to immigration, just because, be sure that if you let people in, that you can accommodate them to the best of your abilities. Like, don't let them live in unworthy conditions, because then they might actually have been better off going somewhere else or stay where they can come from, in a way. So in a way, just make good on your promise. And because if you overpromise, that's not only bad for the people that are already here, but it also in a way incentivizes people to keep on coming here. And I'm not saying that like they shouldn't leave wherever they come from, because when you come from Haiti, Venezuela, or wherever, like it's terrible, you gotta leave. But then maybe not, they wouldn't have come necessarily to Chile, but would have looked for another destination to go to where they could live in better conditions.
I follow what you're saying. It makes sense, yeah, because a lot of immigration was stemmed from Piñera's promise to Venezuelans to that they were gonna protect, like, that they had a place to arrive, which was Chile.
Yeah.
Which it was an overpromise, and they saw themselves overwhelmed. And personally, I think that they just decided not to really fix it.
Yeah.
Because there are reports that that several not charity cases, but nonprofits were trying to help create albergues. How do you say that?
Hostels, if you will, or just not refugee camps, but more like safe houses.
Yeah, safe house places where
watching too many Hollywood movies. Like safe house.
Places where the immigrants would be able to sleep without having to set up tent in the middle of the park.
Yeah.
Which is what a lot of people they said that was the reason why they did the protest, because we don't want these people in the middle of the park and crime and whatnot.
Yeah, and of course, in a way, I get that if you are an Iquique resident, you might feel uncomfortable with this. Like, I probably would not feel very comfortable with that either, but I don't think that the immigrants are the ones to blame in this case.
Yeah, they're just, yeah.
I think that's the big thing. And, this, I think this is just one of these typical situations where it's really high time to just debunk and re-debunk a lot of myths that have been going around. Because I watched that little video clip in the Chile Today website where there was this lady who just basically blurted out these very typical prejudices. Yeah. It's like, they take our jobs and crime and why should the government spend all the money on them before it goes to us? And yet, like, all these things that on the face might seem reasonable, but if you or not, it really depends on where you stand. But like, if you keep on digging into that, it's just absolute bunk, So I just did a little, and I wish I would have had a little bit more time to prepare this. So just I dug a little bit into that just to again make clear that there's really not a lot to most of these claims that people bring up. Let's start with this whole crime rate.
Yeah.
Like, people keep on saying, oh my God, these immigrants from these poor countries, they're bringing all the crime here and it's not safe anymore. And it's just not true. Just the numbers just do not back this up. And there have been several studies ad nauseum. There have been numerous studies, actually. So there was this study called, Criminalidad, Seguridad, Migración, un análisis en el Chile actual, which means crime, security, migration, analysis of Chile as of today, which was published by the Servicio Jesuita a Migrantes. And it found that between 2010 and 2019, there have been 1.6 times more foreign victims than perpetrators. So basically, if you put this into relation, you can see, no, these guys are actually the victims of most of the crimes. They are not the ones who perpetrate that. And you could say, okay, most of the immigration started at around when the pandemic started, and started like in 2020. you could make this case. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but if you take a data set ranging from 2010 to 2019, that is very much representative. So I don't think that like if you have 2 years or 1.5 years of heightened immigration in between, that's not going to put a big dent into this whole thing. Like the same study even found like a negative correlation between like permanencias definitivas, the permanent residency issued per year, and the crime rate in the majority of regions. That means that basically the more foreigners actually settle down permanently, the lower the crime rate,
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, that I found that too. And so, yeah, that's one thing. And what was the other thing? Oh, yeah, and I think actually the most interesting statistics here was that, and that was from 2019. But first, we got to know that in 2019 we had about 1.2 million immigrants, which might be a little bit more down, which was about at the time 6.6% of the overall population. So foreign perpetrators are at about 1.5% of basically like all the perpetrators in Chile. Foreigners of that is like 1.4%. If the overall rate is 4.1, so you see, if you just take the sample size of the immigrants here, that's a lot lower than the overall Chilean population. So that's basically the number that you need to basically put this thing to bed, to say, okay, yeah, no, it's not the foreigners, it's not the immigrants that are causing all the crimes here. There was a second study by the CEP, which is the Centro Estudios Públicos, I think it's called, the Center for Public Studies here.
Sure.
Called whatever.
Yeah.
That sounds right.
Yeah.
It was Inmigración en Chile, una mirada multidimensional, so immigration in Chile, a multidimensional approach. It was also from 2019, and it came to a lot of the same conclusions. However, and just to be fair, it also found that foreigners are overrepresented in drug-related crimes. Like, you got to be fair here. But that was especially the case in the north of the country. However, this is not necessarily related to migratory issues, and could just as well be criminal elements from abroad that come to Chile just for this purpose and this purpose alone.
Also,
and has nothing.
Yeah.
Exactly. They didn't come here just to settle down or to flee their home country. They just like, hey, it's good business here, trafficking drugs. So either way, there's no data to make that clear. So basically saying that like all the foreigners that come here and settle down, that bring all the drugs and cause all the traffic, that is also a conclusion that you cannot jump to, because the data just doesn't back that up.
Yeah. You have to add like a little box in the form when you get here.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Are you just coming for drug trafficking, or you want to settle down and drug traffic, Yeah, that's going to be very reliable data. And there was actually a third study from 2020. That one is a little bit more recent, called... it was actually has an English title, and was actually, for some reason, it was a German study. I don't know why they would care over there, why we would care, but okay, good on them. It was called Immigration Crime and Crime Misperceptions, miss in parentheses. And that one also found that while there was no direct correlation between migration and crime rates, there was a correlation between migration and the residents' or the natives' behavior, and so far that they start worrying more about crime. So the authors found that, like, the more foreigners are coming to an area, the more the local residents are taking countermeasures against crime, or the promise of crime, if you will, such as like installing alarms and security cameras, and even forming local militias. So basically, they're riling themselves up. They just see a bunch of foreigners. They go like, "Oh my God, crime is on the rise. We gotta kind of like do something and get that." And this becomes like it's a circle that feeds itself. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, because you could make the case. Or basically, they could make the case, it's like, see, like, we had to install all these alarms, like, we even had to form a militia to defend ourselves against these immigrants. It's like, no, you didn't have to do that.
Yeah.
Like, you did this because you assumed it was going to go that way, but it just does not go that way.
I will say that it's a really big step from installing your own alarms and then just forming a militia.
Yeah, you're right. I didn't want to list up all the steps in between.
I understand, but it's like, I just put this alarm, now we have AK-47s ready to defend our house.
Might as well just go all in, you know? You can never be too safe. So yeah, that's one point, and I think the last 2 points that I can just tick off very quickly is this whole prejudice that, like, the foreigners are taking our jobs, the Turk Gerbs. And there was actually a study by the Cato Institute, which basically is not only tackling the U.S. because it's located there, but saying in general terms, it found that immigrants all over the world, they typically move to growing regions and help the growth of that economy. And if you can make a case for Chile, that Chile is a growing region, right?
Yeah.
It is a growing economy. So basically, they come here. If they work in what they're supposed to be working in, they basically help the country grow. The economy grow. And even if they don't work in what they're supposed to be doing, they're labor, they're workforce. And since the economy is growing right now, actually the economy is growing a lot more because last year wasn't really so good. It's all like relative.
It's COVID.
Exactly.
COVID has a
but
big
right now
asterisk,
they're like
so.
they're rehiring, and they need people to work, So that's one thing. And the other thing is, and you've probably heard this 1,000 times before, they don't steal the jobs. Even the lesser qualified workers, they don't steal the jobs. They just do the jobs that nobody else wants to do. That's another thing, And the last point that I think is just ludicrous. It's like they abuse the welfare system. It's like, buddy, if they were to abuse the welfare system, they'd have to be in the system to begin with, and they're not in the system. Okay, they could receive some government help, but this doesn't even compare. It's not they're going to the registro civil every month and cash in their welfare check or whatever. Because they're not even legal here. Most of I don't know if most of them, but a lot of them are not. So it's like you cannot make this argument. So I'm gonna get off my soapbox now because I think I've got my point across. So
our second news, which is a good one, which you may have heard of it, is that we are done with the curfew.
Woo-hoo!
After 18 months.
Yep.
Which I think breaks a record in Chilean history. For
Yeah.
the longest time with state of exception in democracy.
Yeah. Okay.
That's
a caveat.
Officially it will end on Thursday, September 30th.
Mm-hmm.
October 1st the Friday night of October 1st will be the first one without curfew. So, plan your parties up ahead.
Yeah.
I think there's a couple of discotheques that are already having
Look, I gotta say, like, up to this I mean, maybe I'm just like too old already, but like when they moved the curfew to 12 o'clock midnight, I was just like, well, that's good enough for me. So I don't even need that. Like that can stay there indefinitely. I don't even care anymore. And to be honest, like if you went home after 12, nobody cared.
That's true. Yeah,
nobody.
No
It wasn't
really
enforced anymore.
No.
Even before they moved it to 12, even if it was past 10, nobody cared.
No, I think one time I got home at like 10:15, just nothing.
One time I got actually home like way past midnight, and the curfew was still like 12, and there was nothing. I mean, I felt a little squeamy. I felt like, I don't know. I hope they don't, catch me red-handed, whatever. But there were no cops on the street. Okay. So
no, I'm really nervous about cops, not just for any reason.
Oh yeah. Tell me about it. Why is that, Diego?
No, I just get nervous around police, like.
But you got to hide.
Authority figures in general, so I just get so. So yeah, like it was 9:58 and started getting nervous.
Right. Excuse me, sir. Could you please pull over?
I think
License and registration, please.
I think one time a carabinero just asked me for like a direction, and it just froze up. Like, yeah, just over there. The street's right there.
Just don't hurt me.
Basically that, and then on November 1st, we'll start the new more restrictions, but they're not going to be as restricted.
Yeah.
Since we're done with the state of constitutional exception, so there's not going to be no more quarantines, and the paso a paso plan is going to change significantly. Basically, they're going to start asking more for the mobility pass, which is a pass that you get through the vaccines.
Yep.
And basically, then they're going to start requesting the vaccine pass for kids over 12 years old.
They're going to make this mandatory now.
Yes, for a lot of places.
Yeah. I can see a lot of controversy.
Yeah.
That's going to be a hinky thing. So
it's going to be tough to enforce because, again, they don't have enough carabineros to go fiscalizar every single restaurant ever. And plus, there's because I think I think the mobility pass thing is going to be based on. I mean, the aforo is going to be based on square footage.
Yeah.
So that's going to be something that. So I don't know what the restrictions exactly, but if it's a small space, and I think it's maximum 15 people.
Yeah, and I think it depends on the phase that you are in. I think if you're in phase 3. I mean, first, they changed phase 1 from quarantine to, what was it called, restriction or something like that? They just did away because, now if the state of exception, now that's not a thing anymore, the quarantine as a concept is not a thing anymore either. Which, make no mistake, if you are suspected, or if you are sick with COVID, you're on a quarantine.
Yeah, because we're still...
It still applies in individual cases and probably when you come back from traveling abroad.
Yeah, because the state of exception is gone, but the medical emergency is still up.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is what gives the Ministry of Health those, what's the word, like powers? No.
Authority, yeah.
Authority to be able to quarantine people, enforce certain aspects for health reasons.
Yeah, exactly.
Preventing further outbreaks.
Yeah. I mean, makes sense. I mean, but, I hope there's nobody out there who just like, yoo-hoo, no more quarantines ever. It was like, no,
Yeah.
if you're sick and if they have good enough reason to basically put you under quarantine, they will still do it. But as a concept that applies basically like in a broad swath to basically an entire comuna, this is not going to be a thing anymore.
Yeah, it's individual quarantine.
Exactly. And I think they added another phase, which was a bit like, okay, because they added a fifth phase right now, which they call apertura avanzada, like advanced opening, which to me, it kind of left the impression to me that they were just like, they kind of want to end this bit by bit, but not quite, It's just like, okay, let's just add another one, because if they hadn't added that would mean that after phase 4, like, we're good, I guess they weren't really ready to make that concession yet. They'd be like, no, I think after phase 4, if we just don't change basically whatever defines the phases, like, we don't want to run that risk. Let's add another phase.
Yeah, I think that's smart, because otherwise, like, fifth phase, we're done with it, like, everything's finished, then, people are going to go a bit crazy.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people haven't been, like, even we had, like the peaks of the pandemic, there were still people doing parties and stuff like that. I think there was, I think on the same day that we had
like everybody knows La Isi Reinecke by now.
Yeah. And, what was the other one? And there was, like, the Latrini. Something like that. Yeah, the high in Lago Rapel. Oh, God.
Shout out to Trini in La Isi.
So, yeah, that's basically the two big news stories.
Exactly. Well, about that, I think what did surprise me is that now, what date is today? We're recording this on the 29th. We are 3 weeks away from the second anniversary of the Estallido Social.
Yes.
So I'm a bit surprised that they actually said, like, we're like, no more curfew.
That's right.
Because that's gonna be, man, like,
rough.
The October 18th that's gonna be fun.
Oh yeah. Well, talking about the government and what they don't see coming.
Yeah.
I have a third news.
All right.
Which I don't think you've heard about it. So the government planned an idea to bring more tourism into the Atacama region.
Okay.
Are you familiar with the Desierto Florido?
I mean, I know of it. I've seen pictures, but I never went. I always wanted to go, but I never went.
Okay, so the Desierto Florido is this phenomenon that happens every couple of years, where the Atacama Desert sees enough rainfall to make flowers bloom in the middle of the desert. I've had the privilege of seeing it, and it is beautiful. It's like an entire field of lavender and I think orange and poppies, and it's beautiful. So the government decided that to help tourism in the Atacama region, they're going to start watering the desert every year to have the Desierto Florido show up every year. Because it was normally a natural phenomenon, so it didn't happen on clockwork. It happened it was more random.
All right.
Which, after they announced this, the Dr. Francisco Correa from the Instituto Iberoamericano de Desarrollo Sustentable, I'm not going to translate that.
What was it again?
The Instituto Iberoamericano de Desarrollo Sustentable.
The Ibero-American Institute for Sustainable Development. Bam! Nailed it.
Nice, great. One. That was awesome. So what he said, that doctor said that this is a horrible idea with no science behind it.
No scientific science.
Yeah, there's nothing like.
Bro, do you even science?
Basically, someone in the government said, "No, we should water the desert. We should get plants here."
You know what that reminds me? Have you ever watched the movie Idiocracy?
Oh yeah. Oh, when they started
with the what's that called, the thirst mutilator, like this game.
Yeah, it's got electrolytes.
The electrolytes. It's what plants crave. It's like, no, it's not. Yeah, I mean, okay, because when you just said that they were gonna water the plants, like my first instinct went to, like, really, that's a lot of it's a waste of water there.
Yeah,
To begin
first
with.
of all.
But then again, it was just like, okay, so how would they source the water to begin with? Because it could be non-drinkable water that they might have in abundance. I do not know about that. But then the other thing was also basically where that gentleman went. It's just like, does that even work?
Yeah, I don't think
Because
so.
because I suppose it's a naturally occurring phenomena that you cannot force, I guess.
I don't think so.
Yeah,
I mean,
do absolutely not know what I'm talking about.
yeah,
just for the record,
me
but-
neither. I mean, I'm not. I almost failed high school biology, but yeah. So
I hope you're not listening, Mom.
So the doctor, he elaborates a little bit, saying that this would basically modify the natural ecosystem. So we don't know, like, you'd be basically ruining the desert's ecosystem, and we don't know how that would affect
Yeah.
the animals or the or the few plant lives that live there or anything.
I think this is where a lot of people. This is what a lot of people get wrong, because you look at the desert and you just, as a layman, you just see the desert and there's nothing. Like, what ecosystem are you talking about? And then basically the expert come out and was like, oh no, there is so much ecosystem.
Yeah,
it's like ecosystem galore over there. You just don't see it. It's like, it's subterranean. It's maybe there's just like, I don't know, man, one cactus every like 15 square miles, but that one cactus is really important for whatever reason, and you have a lot of critters, and if it wasn't for the desert here, like basically the climate in other parts of the country would be so much different. And yeah, like, I guess the takeaway there is also, doesn't matter what kind of landscape it is, just be careful, because you might set off a domino effect that you don't know how it's gonna end.
Yeah,
We're already losing all the bees, so that's gonna be that's terrible to begin with. So yeah, just don't mess with.
Yeah, I really hope
people.
this. I really hope this was just like a brainstorm and someone like.
And also, like, honestly, I'm a bit surprised that they want to foster tourism in the Atacama region. It's not like the Atacama region lacks tourism already. I mean, you got San Pedro Atacama, which is. I worked in tourism for a couple of years.
Okay.
And I think, and I don't know what has changed because that's like more than 10 years ago, but at the time, I think the most popular tourist destination in Chile, and if you exclude Santiago, because Santiago is kind of like you have to land in Santiago anyway if you want to get to Chile.
It's technicality.
Nobody really stays in Santiago just to see Santiago, to be honest. Sorry, Santiago, we love you, Santiago, but it is what it is. So basically, the most famous tourist destination was Torres del Paine. That was number one.
Sense.
And close number two was San Pedro Atacama. And I've been there. I went there twice, I think. And I'm more of a southern Chile guy. I'm not much of a desert guy.
You submitted the first time you went there into the podcast, didn't you?
What?
Story.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
The story with
so-
the broken ATM. Good lord. Yeah, I'm not gonna tell that
don't
again,
tell
but-
the story. If you want to check, you can check that. It was one of the first episodes, so
I think so.
I
Yeah,
don't remember the number. We'll put it in the
that was
description.
I sent a letter. Yeah.
Yeah.
A letter, snail mail, with a stamp and all that, written with a quill.
So yeah, that's the interesting proposal from the government, which the government is actually on its way out. We have a election this year.
Oh yes.
We're not going to talk about that. We will go much more in depth into the election and the candidates and everything with Bethany when she gets back.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening, and thank you, Lenny, for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
We have part 2 right now of Lenny speaking more about German
like you
and
haven't heard enough
Chilean.
of my voice yet.
We have more of Lenny speaking about German-Chilean relations. So thank you for listening.
All right. Thanks. Bye.
Now we have event announcements and stuff. Dun, 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 dun. So, on October 7th, there is a horrible movie night. Do you know what this is, Lenny?
Oh, I know it's horrible and it's about a movie, but it's good. It's the good kind of horrible.
Yeah, you went to the last one.
Oh yeah, it was so fun.
Okay, it's what do we do? It sounds like what would you go see a horrible movie? No, it's hilarious because we get a Pingüino and I are helping coordinate it. We get a horribly hilarious movie. Last time it was The Velocipaster, which was a preacher who turns into a dinosaur, but was also a ninja.
Of course. You can't not be a ninja if you're a pastor and you're
And
trying to do a
also
dinosaur.
and it was so fun. And what we do is we show this at a bar. We laugh. We meet people. We drink beer or non-alcoholic beverage of your choice. Or eat some food, whatever, and laugh and have a good time. It's completely free. It's on October 7th. More information is going to be posted in the link in the description of our, what's it called? Podcast.
Oh, radio
And
show?
it's completely free. It's completely free. It's run by the Chistolas Comedy Group, and I'm going to be there. Pingüino's going to be there. It's going to be a great time.
Something more fun. Germanisms. Doesn't sound as fun as it actually is, but of course, due to the high immigration that
It
had
doesn't
happened here,
sound as fun as it actually is, so it is fun?
to me it is.
Okay.
Absolutely. I mean, there are very few Germanisms that I can think of,
But they're fun.
but they're fun and they're yummy because among them are words such as Kuchen.
Oh, Kuchen.
Yeah, absolutely. You got the strudel.
Yeah, but we have
or the
strudel
strudel.
in English too.
Okay, fine.
Kuchen we don't have, but
And
we
then
have strudel.
Or then you have the shop.
Shop, that's
Yeah.
German as well?
Yeah, and honestly, I didn't really know that in the beginning because it relates to the German word. Oh, come on, what was it now? The shopping.
Shopping.
The shopping, which is kind of archaic or maybe a little bit more in use in the southern part of Germany. But yeah, that's kind of where it came from. And this is how they
Okay.
use it.
So for those who are fluent English speakers, Kuchen is like a type of cake.
Yeah, but actually in
shop
Germany
is-
it means cake. Period.
Shop is what we used to talk about beer on tap here. A shop is a beer on tap.
And there's another word that you don't really see that much anymore. I think it has fallen a little bit out of use, and it was actually more in use in the south, which is suche. I don't know if you've seen that.
Suchen?
Suche. S-U-C-H-E, which is...
Sushi.
Yeah, no. Oh, no, that would be nice, but no, this one is not... This is not a culinary Germanism.
As the Sushi.
Exactly, no.
Vamos
No,
comer sushi.
Suche is S-U-C-H-E, which basically translates directly. It means search or looking for. And it actually has a funny history because the meaning translates into something like gopher, if you will, you know? Yeah, kind of like, okay, gopher, junior, if you will, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. The gopher.
And basically the history behind this whole thing, what I once read was that in the South, since you had so many Germans, whatever, there were a lot of landowners there and they needed workers.
Uh-huh.
So they went to, I don't know, the railroad station or the port or whatever they had there where immigrants came in from Germany or wherever. They would basically prepare signs and said, Suche, looking for workers. Ba, 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 bam.
Ah.
And this is how this came to pass. They would call it, and they were like, I don't know what that means, but it looks like the suche means worker.
Search?
Yeah, or means gopher or something like that. So this is how this. It's not very much in use
It
anymore.
is fun.
It
Aw,
is
that
fun.
was
See,
so much fun.
Promise, kid. And the last one actually that occurred to me is the word lumpen. That is also
Lumpen?
yeah, lumpen.
I don't know if I know this one.
You should know this one because of you of all people should know this one because it's a very left-wing thing.
Me of all people. How are you outing me on my podcast?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. I know that you're moderately centrist, so.
Obviously, I have to stay neutral on
Of course,
a
of
public
course.
podcast.
Of course, I'm sorry.
Okay, so what's lumpen?
So lumpen is the what people call lumpen here is more like the down on their luck people, working class. The people that go out and really destroy shops and the masses. I'm really struggling
You're
to find the
struggling
words
to
here.
define this in a
It's
non-offensive
exactly
way.
a non-offensive way, exactly because the word by itself is very offensive actually because lumpen means it comes from lumpen proletariat.
The proletariat.
Yeah, exactly, and lumpen means rags. So basically, it's the proletariat that is clothed in rags and just wants to, for whatever reason, they want a revolution or whatever. So
for whatever reason,
yeah.
because obviously the reason is not obvious.
Exactly, yeah. And what I found, another thing, I found interesting, that at some point apparently Valdivia was considered kind of like a bilingual city because there were just so many Germans in there that he had signposts everywhere, signs in German and in Spanish.
Mish?
And they said that the Mans family, which is apparently a very time-honored family here in Chile.
The Muppets?
No, the Mans.
Oh.
So, they were like landowners as far as I understand. I mean, they were well-to-do, whatever. They had servants as had back in the days.
Still do here.
And apparently they said that the family's Chilean servants, they spoke German with their patrons and they used Mapudungun with their Mapuche customers. And I was just like, what? Like, really, they went... I mean, it sort of makes sense to me that they spoke German to appease the masters, but that they actually did go through the trouble to learn Mapudungun, which is like, I thought that was amazing. I mean, maybe that was also like necessity because probably the Mapuche population, maybe they weren't really that versed in Spanish. I don't know. Could be, could not be, but...
What years?
That was in the second half of the 19th century, more or less.
Okay.
So 1850, something like that. So I
so
thought that
a
was
long time ago.
I think that was actually remarkable.
That is interesting.
Yeah. And another fun fact, well, actually more fun for me than anybody else, I think, is the whole thing that in the south they call the mora, the blackberry. They call it murra. Have you heard of that at Pingüino?
The calafate?
No. It's
damn.
like the mora, the blackberry, they call mora or zarzamora, I think, in Spanish.
I got
Spanish,
excited because I was watching the Great British Bake Off the other day, and they were like talking about a specific berry. I wish I could... The burberry? Something. It was a berry, and they were like...
Isn't that a clothing thing?
No, but it wasn't that. I don't remember what it was called, but they said this berry, and that they were making a pie out of it, and they're like, oh, it's really like tart, blah, 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 and I was like, what the heck is this berry? And they're like, oh, but it's amazing, and it's hard to find here in England, and so I looked it up, and it's literally the calafate.
Really?
And
wow.
I was like, oh, that's so cool!
I mean, I can imagine this thing being... Like, I can imagine they'd be able to grow this thing in England with the climate and all. I mean... Punta Arenas, Patagonia.
Yeah, but they were like, oh, it's fancy,
It's not fancy, it's fancy.
and it was the calafate.
It's
and
like,
I was
we have a beer named after this whole thing.
Yeah.
Exactly. No, but what they did, or what they do still in the southern part, they call it murra instead of mora, and apparently they said that's because like all the German immigrants, they weren't, they couldn't pronounce the R. Like they're rolling the r. Yeah, like I can't, but a lot of Germans.
You've been here for quite a few years.
I do know a lot of Germans who can, not necessarily here, but a friend of mine from university cannot. Like it's, I guess it's maybe, I don't know if it's a genetic thing or a practice thing. I don't know, but they cannot form the sound in their mouth, the r. So basically, instead of mora, they would say mora. So they would just like dragging the r along, like it's very guttural mora. And I think the Chileans just understand murra, and then it's kind of like how this whole thing turns into another word. So I thought that was kind of fun.
That is fun.
It is fun. And since we're on the topic of foodstuffs and culinary things, it's a very smooth transition that I do here. One thing I've noticed here is like I want to call the fake German restaurants.
Oh yeah, with the bratwurst and the two crew. But they're yummy.
No. I don't mean that. I mean there are legit German restaurants. If you think they're good or not, that's a different thing, But like this whole, for example,
should have seen his eye roll.
The whole tippy-tap.
Oh no, that's not German.
The Fuente Alemán. Those are sandwiches.
No. Like
I'm not saying it's bad. I'm not saying it's bad, but
there's a difference between a place that sells sandwiches and a place that sells German food in Chile.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I'm absolutely not. I'm not bashing their food. I mean, it's good if you're to that good. They get great sandwiches. It's just like the German cuisine is not really known for their sandwiches of pan de migre.
That is a Chilean mixed. That's a Chilean. Interpretation of German food, which is sandwiches.
Yeah, and everybody thinks that in Germany we eat all the time crudo, which is basically just raw minced meat spiced up with
delicious.
Which is I have some, but it's not like it exists there, but it's not a very common thing,
No, there are German restaurants in Chile that are really good, where you can get some good bratwurst and schnitzel and all that fun stuff, but. It's not going to be the tippy top. It's not going to be the Fuente Alemana. No. It's going to be a German restaurant, not a place you go to get.
And I mean, and actually, I just wanted to say, like, if you want to have some German food, like authentic German food, I think one place I could recommend would be the place called Tante Marlene, which is up in Vitacura. It's run by.
I just went there like 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, it's run by a German couple, and they have authentic food. So basically, and also like food from. Because there's no such thing as German food, period. It's not only like bratwurst and sauerkraut, It's like, you got fish, we even got a sort of pasta, if you will, which is also, depends on which region you're on. So they basically cover those bases very well. And I mean, there used to be this place that that's kind of controversial. This place, what's called Lili Marlene. I don't know if you heard of it. They closed down after the Estallido Social. I went there a couple of times, but it's a place you have to be willing to leave politics outside, because man, are they ever right wing, man. Now you get pictures with Pinochet, like they not even try to hide the whole Pinochet thing, like they were like out there.
There are still restaurants like that in Chile that, or like especially like little tiendas, little mini markets that you can go in, and they're like, there's the Pinochet statue, or there's the Pinochet picture, or there's your Nazi flag, and you're like, and I'm in the wrong place.
Yeah.
Here, I'm gonna turn around and go to the next place.
Goodbye. So that was one thing. Even though I gotta say, man, the food was really good. The food was really good. I was like struggling a little bit between my morals and my hunger. So I was like, okay, fine. So, but they did close down because, I mean, everybody who knew this restaurant knew where they stood in terms of politics, and I guess they were a target, definitely, and they have always been a target because
if you're gonna be an asshole and like put up like fascist shit, just your freedom of speech has consequences.
Right. And you have basically, if you walk by the place, I mean, first off, you wouldn't get in. Like, you have to have a reservation, and there was actually a guard in a long trench coat. Like,
oh
honestly, like every time I saw that, it was like,
why
is this guy an SS official? Like, what the, like,
why
really
do they want to be
that?
fascist that bad? Just take your shit down. Like, take your shit down. Like, what is it, like, in open it up to people. You can have your own belief system and be, like, an internal asshole, but, like, why is it so important for you to be like a public fascist?
Yeah,
Come on.
It's just like they were just advertising the whole thing. It was like, what's your name? What's your reservation? Okay, you can come in. It's like, really? Is that necessary? I guess it is, So, as I said, food was good, but they closed down, so they're not around anymore.
Bye.
And
Bye, Felicia.
So you got Tante Marlene, which is something that I recommend. Is good German food and fills you up, because Germany is not known for their light cuisine. So that's that. So
nice and hefty cuisine
exactly.
and beer.
So talking about controversial political things, one thing that actually happened to me a lot here was the when people learned that I was from Germany, they were like, oh, ha, 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 and then they did the Hitler salute,
Oh, no.
And they were just, like, laughing at me, and I'm like, yeah, okay, buddy, I get it. I get where you're coming from, Just don't do this with anybody. Don't do this.
I have a weird belief system, and I have talked about this before, like, in, like, my comedy before, but it's like, anytime somebody's, like, location, movement with your hands, it's always offensive. Like, for example, I'm like, oh, my family's from Texas. And they're like, oh, you mean yeehaw? And I'm like, just don't. Or like, oh, that person's from India. Oh, do you mean like
namaste?
Yeah, or like they'll point to their forehead, right, or like they'll be like, oh, Indian, like, and I'm like, just don't do anything with your body. Just be like,
cringe.
Just be like, that's nice. Or they'll do like the gun movements with their hands when they find out I'm from the South. And I'm just like, just don't do that.
And in a way, like, by now, I'm kind of, the first time around, I was kind of like taken aback. Now I'm laughing it off, because I know it comes from
a place of ignorance.
Yeah, I didn't want to say ignorance because it sounds ugly.
No, but it is. It's like,
it comes from a place of ignorance. And
they know better. People know
depends
better.
on who you talk to, but
I don't know. Like, sometimes I'm like, you know better. You just don't give a shit.
Could be. But I school them. I tell them, it's like, hey, just don't do that again. Don't do it with any other Germans, and definitely do not do that. Shall you ever go to Germany to visit, because that is a federal crime there. Like, you will get locked up in jail if they catch you. And they're like, what? Seriously, this is no laughing matter over there.
No, don't just everybody be nice. Let's play our bongos. It's like here also. People like to throw around the N-word here.
Oh, God.
And I cannot tell you. I have to get in people's faces for them to understand that they can't use that word. Like, if I'm just like, dude, no, that's not okay because you don't understand, then they'll just be like, ha ha, and then they'll say it again. And so I have to get up in people's faces and be like, no, you do not understand.
Right.
Do not say that.
I have been associating with somebody for reasons that does that, and every time he does, I'm just like, should I tell? Because apparently he lived in the States. He told me that he lived in the States.
I'm like,
you lived in the States and you don't know? Like, you still doing that? You should know better.
He's just being an asshole. He's just being an asshole, and he's like,
it's just really weird, yeah.
So anyway, so that's
so that's that. But actually, that kind of comes back to what we talked about before. This whole thing about like, okay, how do you deal with your history? Because again, in Chile, it was kind of like, okay, let's just like sweep this under the rug. This never really happened. So there has never been a conversation about what happened. Because yes, of course, there are always two sides to everything. There's like I'm not even
and sometimes one is right and one is wrong.
Yeah, the thing is like, okay, what are you willing to sacrifice in terms like? How far are you willing to go to justify one side or the other, Like in Nazi Germany, and it sounds ugly, but also the winner writes the history books. It has always been like that. So basically the Allies kind of shaped the curriculum. This is where I got my education from. This is how my mom got her education. And we grew up with a set of values saying, okay, Nazism, bad. Do not kill people. Not cool. Like respect Jews, respect minorities. And it doesn't matter if you think that this person is a drain on the social system, you don't get to
be an asshole.
You don't get to let him like kill him or he doesn't.
People have rights. People have rights to life, and don't kill people. Like, and I mean that's the problem with what happened in Spain, and literally we copied and pasted what happened in Spain here, and it was just like, everything's forgiven and let's not talk about it. And Chile, I really believe, I'm not Chilean, but I if I can humbly say this from my perspective, and that I've talked to Chileans also who agree, like that there is a lot of scars on the Chilean community from this inability to look at what they did in the face and reconcile with their own history, with the good things and the bad things, and to like look at their family and to be like, look, my fucking grandfather was a fucking torturer. That's fucked up. Or like, because there are, I have friends who are like, my aunt was tortured. My dad was put in jail. Like things like that. So it's so fresh here. Like, and unfortunately there's just, it's so painful, and Chile is just sort of scratching the surface of being able to like reconcile with their own history. And I think that's why like the Estadio Social, like that happened. Like it was this like coming together of finally people being like, enough. We need a new freaking constitution because it's enough.
Yeah. There's like this clash of, even like this juxtaposition of different sets of values, if you will. I think that is the thing that is in, and I don't want to say that it's absolutely like homogenized in Germany or whatever. But
absolutely not.
You would say that at least like a big majority, let's say 95% there, agree on some very fundamental values there that kind of shape our political discourse in a way. Okay, like democracy is great, it's a thing, let's do that, Right,
we can look back and say Pinochet was bad. Like we have to, as a society, be like, okay, Pinochet was bad. Like we can't keep pretending and lying to, or like not lying to ourselves, like as if I'm there, but like, we have to learn about this. What happened? Why did it happen?
Yeah, and why is it not good?
Why is it not good? And how can we prevent this from happening again? But there is none of that in Chilean curriculum, or very little.
Exactly. And this takes years because in a way you have to agree on what values are acceptable or not.
Because we just talked about how Uli was involved in the Colonial Dignidad, and in like Piñera, it's an Uli. Like his brother wrote the Constitution we're trying to abolish. Like we're not removed at all as a Chilean society from these things that happened. Basically nobody went to jail. Pinochet got to live out his life and then die. Lucia is still alive. She's 5 billion years old.
She's never gonna die.
She's 5 billion years old. She's still alive and nothing has happened to her. And you see her and her family like having once, like having a great time. And it's like, you just get to live your lives. All of these other people were murdered and tortured. Bachelet was tortured, and she was the president of Chile.
Right. And I think it's just on a more fundamental level here is a thing that, because I know people that are still very much in favor of what happened during the dictatorship.
They're just misguided. They're ignorant.
Yeah, but here's the thing. It's like they have their reasons, and you go like, okay, I do understand your reasoning. I just do not think that this result merits this kind of course of action. You know what I'm saying? It's just like, okay, yeah, sure. Like if we double down on crime, if we just implement curfews 24/7, blah, 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 yes, crime is going to go down. Like, or whatever, street
If we
crime.
murder people we don't like, then yes, people we don't like stop existing. That's a truth there, but we can't do that. Like that's just something we have to, as a world,
exactly.
as a planet, need to decide that it's bad.
Exactly.
Right.
That's the things. Like you have to be.
The ends do not justify the means.
Yeah, and you have to be able and be comfortable to live in gray areas. You know, that's the thing. You know, there are certain gray areas that have to live in, because yes, we do agree a certain measure of security is necessary, but then we do not want a police state either. So it's like, okay, where do we move in between these two extremes?
When did this become a political? When did this become a political podcast?
Where did this soapbox come from?
Jesus, Mary and Joseph.
Okay, fine.
You invite the German on the podcast, and suddenly everything gets political.
Yeah. Like didn't see that one coming, right? So yeah. Anyway, so let's move on to that. I think I got two more left, and
how many points have we had?
Actually, no, it was just 8, but they were very long points.
That's fine. I'm enjoying myself. Pingüino is about to fall asleep over there, but I'm enjoying myself.
Yeah, but we're almost done here, I guess. Maybe. So, like, one thing that you mentioned before are the German products, which is also something that I've noticed, which I just think is hilarious.
You slap a German flag on it. And what was it? One time you told me there were condoms.
Yeah, I think that was one of my stand-up jokes there.
Yeah.
But it was actually a brand of condoms. It was like made in Germany. It was like, okay, that means that they're like as incorruptible as steel or something like that. It was just like, this is like the most non-central thing that I've ever seen.
German condoms.
It's like,
oh my
you
gosh.
know, have pleasure, but also be efficient. You know, it's like.
I've seen like German eye drops. Yeah. I've seen also, I'm like, so they're from Germany, so that means like people, you slap a German flag on a product in Chile and people are like, I'm a get that shit.
Yeah, exactly. And exactly what you just mentioned before, there are like so many companies here that kind of like, I don't even want to say they pretend to be German because that would be unfair, but they kind of like try to.
Well, they understand the market, right?
They bathe in that air, you know. They go like, okay, let's just try to look German, like Ursus Trotter, Albin Trotter. Which, to be fair, I think they were German immigrants or sons of German immigrants, so they got that going for them. But then they got, you know, the whole.
It's a Chilean company. There's nothing associated with Germany with it at all.
They got the type font in like this. Very,
they got that little eagle that's kind of
the eagle
fascist.
And everything. So just go like, well, we still use an eagle in our crest these days.
Oh,
so.
okay.
So, but
I see eagles and I get scared. Though to be
like
fair,
the bald eagle.
I was just gonna say that. I was just gonna say that.
So they got that, and
say what you want about the bald eagle. It's majestic as fuck.
And there was also like a company. I remember once, I haven't seen, it was like a consultora, I think, and they were called Viel Besser, which it literally translates to much better, which is just like the weirdest name to have. But if you don't know what it means, because it looks German, so okay, you know. But it's just like, really? Okay, well, whatever works for you.
There's weird translations here. There's a place called Too Much Sushi, and I'm like, oh my gosh, okay, too much means it's excessive and not good. That means it's bad. You don't want too much sushi. You want so much sushi or a lot of sushi. You don't want too much sushi.
You know.
No, it's too much.
Yeah, but apparently this whole thing was like just associating yourself with Germanness apparently works, which is surprising considering everything that I had and everything that I've talked about for the last I don't even know how many hours, but okay, still works. And I do that myself with my little company. You know, we just try to hold up the German flag, and it's German products we're selling, but you know, like every time people ask me, okay, why should I buy your product? Well, it's from Germany. It's like the first argument that I pull up, you know, and it works most of the time, so, you know.
Well, also there's, and something we really haven't touched on is that there is a lot of still elitism in being white and being from Germany and having that heritage and the last name that is not Latin or Mapuche. And I mean, I was talking to one of my students about this, like the huge desire for Chileans to learn how to speak German. And it's like, why? Like, you go to Germany, nobody's going to speak to you in German. They're going to be like, it's okay, let's speak in English. And then you could have invested that time and money in learning English and of course, me being very biased.
No, but you're absolutely right.
Yeah, you could have.
Or Chinese, let's say Chinese.
Yeah,
Mandarin,
any other language that's not German, because you won't even if you butcher German in Germany, they're going to be like, no, they're just it's an elitist thing. That's it.
Yeah,
people want to learn it here because it's cool, and like rich people learn it, and like white people learn it, and it's really cool. It's the same thing of being like, oh, I have an Italian passport. It's like, okay, I don't care. Like, I don't know. It's just there's an entire elitist thing also, so that gets associated with German products and like German things, and
German,
it's distancing yourself from being what's considered less savory, which is more Latino or more native, which is stupid.
Yeah, and German people, which actually brings me to my next point, which is like really have them like lined up like that.
Point to point.
Yeah, like smooth transitions.
Sorry.
Oh boy.
I just dropped tea on myself.
That is not good. So yeah,
it wasn't hot. Don't worry.
And you see, another thing that I personally experienced is that just the fact of being German, it definitely gives me a how do you call it, foot up? No.
A foot up.
It gives me a foot up in certain situations, but then on the flip side, I feel that it also really triggers ridiculously high expectations sometimes, which is, okay, it's like the dark side of privilege, if you will, because there's no way for me.
Like you get put in a box.
In a way, and they expect you to be a certain way and to work a certain way and to perform a certain way, because I don't know how many interviews I only got invited to because I stood up, because I'm from Germany and I think German and I went to a German university and yada yada yada, also, you're from Germany, tell me about it. It's like the first thing that I got asked most of the times, and I'm not complaining. I mean,
well, you kind of are.
Yeah. I mean, no, I'm not complaining about getting jobs or being interviewed, but it's first of all, I mean, it's not really fair.
I get it. I'm a gringa.
A
gringa. I totally get what you're saying. I get that it's a blessing and a curse in a lot of ways. Like I'm gonna be invited. I'm white. I'm gonna get invited because again, the elitism of being white, being fluent in English, and then English and German. But at the same time, there's a lot of being put in a box.
Yeah, exactly.
Of like you aren't one of us. You are othered in a certain way. And I don't think that the negative outweighs the privilege, because it would be much worse if I didn't have a job. You know what I mean? Of course not. Yeah. Because especially in the English teaching realm, like the whole like native versus non-native English speaking like debate is just ridiculous.
Exactly.
And I don't know, like, but I get what you're saying.
Yeah, no. I've had this actually. I've heard that one of my last jobs that I had, that apparently the guy that hired me, like after he basically gave the okay for me to be hired, he was just like, oh, this guy is German, he's probably going to replace me at some point. It was like, it was like, when I heard about that, I was like, no pressure, Jesus. Yeah. Okay, those are some very high expectations here. It's like, I'm new to this. So like that made me feel a little bit like, okay, I hope I'm really up to snuff here. So it's kind of weird. It's
stereotypes. And also, I mean, hey, like, I get put in a box a lot from being from the U.S., and especially with like the coup and all those kinds of things. And a lot of people from the U.S. are very like culturally ignorant about, about, not everybody, please don't hate me for saying that, but I mean a lot of people who are from the U.S. don't really know what's going on in South America. They group everybody in South America into like the Mexico box, or like they don't want to learn Spanish, or whatever. I could go on forever. And so I very much get stereotyped into she doesn't know Spanish, or she doesn't understand our history. And I will never understand it in the way like a Chilean will. But I don't nobody likes being put in a box and stereotyped.
And you're putting work in this, so,
Yeah. And I live here. It's my home.
Yeah.
I don't want to be like, I don't know, like I don't want people to think I'm like a crazy anti-vaxxing, MAGA lady. So,
I heard maggot lady. Like
maggot lady. Either.
Oh, good Lord.
That either. I don't want to be associated with maggots either.
No, who does?
No hate on maggots. I'm sure they're a very important part of the ecosystem, but I don't want to hang out with them.
Right. Okay, so I guess that's...
Is that what you got? That was fun. That was long. That was long, but I had a lot of fun.
Me too.
Lenny, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I learned a lot. I hope you guys learned a lot and enjoyed it. I definitely think we're going to split this into 2 parts. But, so don't forget, we have several events coming up, but the first one that's set in stone is October 7th, the Horrible Movie Night. Come watch a horrible movie with me and with Pingüino. That's going to be so much fun. We're going to laugh. We're going to have a good time. It's free. It's at the Black Rock Pub, which is an Australian bar near Metro Tobalaba. You can walk from the metro like a minute and a half. It's super close. So it'll be great. I hope to see you there and see you in a couple weeks. Bye.
Bye.
Oh, when in doubt, gringo out. Hey guys, the Chile Today podcast is produced by Diego Pingüino Rivera. It is written by Alicia Lubin and Bethany Francis in conjunction with ChileToday.cl. Hope you enjoy.